I'm joined by a special guest today on the Batcave Beats, McNeff. He's an artist out of LA. He has been making music for the last 3 years as a producer, and now he started to put out some of his own stuff. And we're going to get started by him just sharing a little bit about how he first started getting into music.
Yeah, so I'm McNeff, and I really have kind of done music my whole life, like loosely. Like I played piano as a kid, and then I did some guitar as I got older. But I always thought like music wasn't really for me. I loved listening to it, but I just randomly jumped on GarageBand one day, and I was like, oh, let me mess around, with some beats, and just kind of started making a beat, and then the next day jumped back on and started continuing the beat, and day after day, and just honestly never quit making beats and producing. So yeah, I've been doing it like seriously for 3 years now, and here we are.
What were those first days like when you first started making beats? Were you looking on YouTube to figure out how to make stuff better, or were you kind of just pressing buttons and
Yeah,
listen?
so it's funny because I kind of say that I'm 99% self-taught producer. So really what I did to learn how to make beats is I rarely ever went on YouTube. Like didn't watch any videos, didn't do anything. All I did is I listened to my favorite songs and just tried to recreate them. Like I'd listen to, the bass, and I'd go, how did they do, the kick drum, in this song that I love, and I just listen to it and I just try to recreate it. And same thing with the hi-hat and the pads and the synths and the pianos. So that's really how those first days went, and just figuring it out.
That's super cool. How did you go about like figuring out how to match? Was it just like picking different things up on the computer, or like how did you find like the exact ways to like replicate it, I guess?
A lot of trial and error, I would say. Like, I would say I probably made 50 beats before I ever made like my first good one. So it was the first 49 was just garbage, basically. Just I bet it was fun. What I mean? Like at those beginning days, it was so fun, and it was just messing around with the kick drum, and there. Yeah, I just say like it was a lot of trial and error. And just like on the hi-hat, I didn't even know like where you're supposed to put the hi-hat like in it, so I'm just messing around. Like I remember that, and I was just messing around and figuring out like what beats to put it on and what beats to put the snare on. And that was really it. That was just time after time again of just trying and failing and trying and failing, and then eventually you starts to sound like a real beat.
Yeah, who were some of the producers you were following at that time that you kind of looked up to, or maybe like like followed their beats maybe more than other people?
Yeah, it's kind of funny because when I first started, it was much less the specific producers and more I looked at like artists and the sounds that they kind of went off of. So it wasn't always like the same producers, but a lot of time it was the same artists and like the beats that they picked. So I remember that one of the very first songs I ever tried to replicate was I don't know if you're familiar with Luna.
Oh yeah, yep, yep.
Yeah, so Luna's Look Back, that song, that is one of the very first songs that I listened to try to replicate. Also, I'm trying to think. I also know Justice Bennett's Replace You was one of the
Oh
very first
yeah,
songs
yeah,
that
I
I
know
listened to.
that.
So I would actually say those are probably the very first two songs that I listened to and like just loved, and I was trying to recreate it. I remember so specifically it was Luna's Look Back. I was trying to recreate the hi-hat. That was the song that taught me how to make hi-hats. But yeah.
That's honestly probably like, I mean, it's probably now, there's probably a lot of people that go into it from a perspective of like, oh, I want to be like Kato or all these other producers that make beats and everything. But a lot of times, like those people have like their own strategies or ways that they make beats, and doing it the way that you did probably led you down a way where you probably have a more like original sound than a lot of people that like if you go on YouTube and watch this one guy's videos, you're probably going to make beats that sound similar to the stuff that he's making versus your own like original ideas.
Yeah, exactly. I completely agree. That was like that was what I was really trying to go for. Kind of went like at the beginning, it was a lot of straight copying, right? Like I had no idea how to do it. I'm just trying to recreate it. But that was one reason why I didn't want to go the YouTube route, is because I felt like if I kind of created it from the ground up, I couldn't be copying someone. I would just kind of inevitably make something that was my own because I just kind of had to teach myself.
Yeah. And when did you feel like it was time to transition from making beats that you weren't releasing to trying to like produce with artists?
Yeah, so I would actually say I said earlier how it took me about 50 to be good, and that very first beat that was my 50th beat that I said was the first good one is my very first song. Don't Leave with Lil X. So that is the beat that on that song is my like 50th beat that I made. So right away, honestly, like the second I felt like I was like, okay, this is kind of solid, I was like, let's jump into it.
And those first feelings, I guess, after you've made, let's say, 49 beats that you haven't really shared, you probably shared with like people close to you, but you haven't really shared on a platform where you're going to get positive and negative feedback on it. What was that like putting something out that you felt like was more like vulnerable in a sense of people you didn't necessarily know were going to hear it?
Yeah, I would say honestly, I felt it was more excitement than nervousness because at that point, getting like streams and like having like a song, like blow up wasn't really like my goal because I knew I was still in the learning phase. It was more this sense of like, I just wanted something out there. So, regardless if people kind of thought it was good or bad, I was just pretty excited to have something that was like official on Spotify, you know? So, I would say like pretty good. Like I just enjoyed having it out there.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good, especially when you're first starting out, that's like the best way to put out stuff because then,
Yeah.
you're just doing it for the enjoyment of it.
Yeah.
After, I think it's even harder in some ways as a producer because not only do you have to like create this beat, but you have to figure out how to match up with an artist and like who's going to sound good and who wants to use it and all that stuff.
Yep.
What has your process been like since that first song of creating a beat and then trying to find people that maybe you think sound good on it versus want a beat and that collaboration piece of it?
Yeah, good question. I would say at the beginning it was definitely different. So at the beginning it was very kind of traditional, like I'd make a beat, I liked it. I wanted to find someone that I thought, would sound good. I would say like that was probably my first like 3 to 4 songs I kind of did like that. But starting with I think it was my fifth song, the one that I did with Frosty, um, that one was very much I made the beat knowing that was exactly who I wanted on it.
Okay.
So it was kind of a difference of instead of making it and then finding who I wanted on it, I was like, I want, 916 Frosty on this. I'm going to make it specifically for him. So then when I hit him up, I can send it to him and hopefully it's like perfect, and we can make a deal. And so that ended up, working out. I hit him up and I was like, yo, like, what do you think about this idea of like, there's no one else on the song. Like it's a feature, but you're going over the whole thing. I have this beat I made you, and yeah, he was stoked for it. He loved the beat, and ever since then, that's the way I've went about it. Is a lot of times I'll even hit up the artist first, see who's interested. Like with, I believe it was like Hunna V and Jared Anthony. I would actually hit him up first, kind of make the deal done, agree, and then I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go make this beat now. like, you know.
Yeah.
So in that sense, I kind of liked it more better that way because it just I knew who I was making it for, and it just would then fit perfectly.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's some people send so many beats out, and I feel like you hear artists talk about, oh, there's like millions of artists, but there's like so many people meeting beats and setting beats and like not having like a way of doing it. I think you're saving yourself a lot of time by like connecting with the artist first and then feeling like, okay, all right, this beat's gonna go to good use. not that
Yeah.
it would otherwise, but you know what I mean? Like having it set up so you have like a vision for it versus creating the beat and then trying to figure out who matches up well on it.